Welcome to another episode of the Art in Session podcast, where we dive into the world of creative professionals, offering inspiration, insights, and practical tools for artists at every stage of their journey. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, our conversations are here to support your growth, connect you with the community, and help you make a real impact with your art. Let's get into it.
All right, we'll get started. I've got a bunch of questions for you. I know the group might have some questions, and I just wanted to go through and show a little bit of your work and say welcome.
Awesome.
This is a great video, so if it's cool, I'll go ahead and share that first.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Stina Aleah, and I'm an artist and entrepreneur. My work, to me, is pieces of me, and it reminds me of situations that I've been in my life, and then it helps me see how far I've come. When people see the work, I want them to be inspired. I want them to see that they're not alone. I want them to feel like they can be their authentic self, that they can tell their stories, that they can heal from their stories, and follow their passions. I didn't discover this passion until late. When I was younger, I was an athlete. I ran track, and that was my entire life's path. One of the biggest years of being recruited in high school, I broke my femur. I think everyone was devastated, and I was going through an identity crisis. At the time, it was like I let my family down, and I only identified as an athlete. And when that was taken away, I was like, well, what do I do now? So my counselors, parents, and principal decided we're gonna sit her in the art room. Before that moment, I never picked up a pencil, paintbrush, or anything like that. And I noticed from that point forward, even through college, every time I was going through something, every time I felt like that again, I started creating to kind of focus in on that feeling that I had when I broke my leg. 2020, that's when I made that bold move to show up to the Black Lives Matter mural and use my art as my voice. And from there, it just snowballed into public murals, preparing my own work, doing brand partnerships, and preparing for my solo exhibition at MoCA. So I think Cleveland was just more accepting of me. Being in Cleveland just kind of fast forwarded everything. I want little black and brown girls to see this and be like, oh, I can do it. And especially, I can look like her and do it.
Such a powerful video, and just like a quick little insight into your overall vibe and intention with creating your art. Would you tell us like a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm an oil painter, I'm an artist, entrepreneur, I'm a mom, got a lot of things going on. I really am just doing this full time, so it is a passion of mine. It does not feel like work. As you heard from the video, I'm completely self-taught, so I haven't taken any classes or workshops or anything of that nature. It really has been a trial and error, trying to find, carve out my own path, find my own way, make my own, have my own voice, and, make my mark in the art world. And so that's really my focus, every day I wake up, that's what I'm thinking about.
It's crazy that you discovered it so like just a few years ago. And were you always kind of creative, or at least
I actually wasn't. Like I really was not creative whatsoever. And even when I broke my leg, that was 2005. And I wasn't even painting. I was trying to like make things out of other things. So like recycled materials, I'm building sculptures, and I was so bad. Like it was just so bad. Like I didn't know how to tap into that part of me. However, I was going through so much that it kept me distracted. But then even the things that I made that now I can look back and be like, wow, that was really horrible, I was so proud of. And it was like that feeling of creating something out of nothing and healing myself mentally while I was doing it. and healing physically at the same time, that feeling really stuck with me. It was something that I just didn't want to let go. So over the years, I kept trying to draw here and there and try and figure things out. But when you're an athlete and you're at a certain point of athleticism, there is a competitor in you that just does not die. So in 2015, I saw a former classmate of mine. I saw her oil painting, and I was like, I could do that. And that's when I started teaching myself how to paint. And I, again, when you're an elite athlete, there are things that you have to do. You know that there's a level of focus. You know that there's a level of commitment that you have to have, consistency that you have to have. And you have to have some form of, like, when I say focus, overall there's a focus, but then there's this, like, I can't spread myself too thin. If I'm going to be great, there's a difference between being good, being great, and being elite. And I felt like if I wanted to be in that category, I had to focus on one thing, and I didn't want to try acrylics and watercolor and this and that. I wanted to master something first and then expand from there. And so that's what I did. And every day since 2015, I'm doing something related to art. Up until this last year, I could faithfully say that I painted every day, even if it was 5 minutes. That was my dedication to making sure that if I was going to do this, there was no plan B. I quit my job not even knowing how to paint. I just knew that it's what I wanted to do. But in my head, it's like, if you have a plan B, then plan A already failed. That was my perspective. And so I was like, well, can't have a plan B, so plan A has to work. And so that's what I did. That's what I did every day. It was like, let me make sure that I can master this and stand out in some way, shape, or form.
That's awesome. You're inspiring so many people through your work and giving people direct access into your process and really utilizing social media in such a powerful way. I would love for you to touch on that. Like, what has this content creation been like for you, and how are you incorporating that into your regular routine?
So, excuse me. So in the beginning of my career, again, my introduction to art was all based on like me like having an injury, going through something mental, dealing with depression, dealing with anxiety, and then trying to get myself out of it through creation. So my entire course of the career was, I'm going through something, this is how I express it. I'm dealing with this is how I express it. So my creations literally are every emotion that I've ever felt throughout the years. Like every single thing, every single painting tells a story. This one in particular that's on the screen right now, There's More of Us, is the title. And it has two meanings. So as a Black woman, and when you speak a certain way or look a certain way, some of your compliments can be very backhanded. Oh, you're beautiful for a Black woman. Oh, you speak well for a Black woman. You're this for a Black woman. And it always came with this for a Black woman, as if I was the different one. Like, so There's More of Us kind of wanted to bring out this, like, no, it's not just me, but we're all beautiful in our own way. We all speak well we all have our own language. We all speak, so that was one thing. But I was also going through something with my family where I was living a life during this time as if I was the only child. And we had a lot of turmoil in my family at the time. And I have 3 other sisters. And no one knew it. Like, I never spoke about them. I couldn't call them. I couldn't do certain things and I was really feeling that. And so that's another point was, there's more of us. It's not just me, and my family's phenomenal. And this kind of helped me kind of get through that time. And, you see some of the pieces and the body missing. That was just us trying to bring ourselves back together. Those missing pieces were still all a work in progress. And so I went through an era where a lot of the art during this phase was unfinished, because that's where I was at the time. But truthfully, like my art creation, really, like I see something because it's what I'm feeling. And then that's kind of how it comes out. Whether I source references online, I kind of just let whatever else happens on the canvas happen on the canvas. And that's, that's how it goes. And now moving forward, I'm learning a new process. I'm actually like, no matter how far I get in my career, I'm now at a crossroads where I'm trying to not just use pain to fuel my content creation or my artwork, but whatever I feel, whether it's happiness, love, for years it was always pain. So now I'm trying to figure out, what does it look like for me when I'm good? Like I'm happy, I'm this, I'm that, so that's where I am now. So my content creation, as time goes on, like I said in the beginning, I wasn't really creative, but the more creativity you use, the more you have. You start discovering certain things. You start expanding your mind. You start, like, I have my best ideas in solitude. So sometimes when I'm really trying to come up with things that I need to express, I go into meditation. I go alone. I seclude myself and I really dig deep into the things that, I want to feel to put on my canvas. And now I'm experiencing, when I did my solo exhibition at the Museum of Contemporary Art, I had a completely different process that opened my world up to something else, which was note taking, which I've never done before. So again, as you use more of your creativity, you begin to have more, and that's even in the creation process. So that's where I am now.
I love how like integrated just who you are and what you're feeling and what you've been through, it fuels this art because it teaches other people too that they can process their life experience through creation. I've just got a couple pieces I wanted to like scroll through and show the rawness, the real emotion and power behind the art. It's like you can feel that so much of you is coming through all of your work. It's so incredible.
Thank you.
I love this quote too. Behind every brushstroke, transition of color, and embellished figure underlies a hidden message. I encourage viewers to look beyond the surface of the canvas to uncover stories that are relevant and identifiable to ourselves and our society. It's like art with a really powerful intention,
Yes.
that goes so much beyond just like creating for art's sake. That's cool. It's cool to just create, but like to do it with this kind of passion is life-changing for a lot of people. Imagine it's like can be overwhelming at times knowing how you've really moved people and really you're just like, this is just me and this is what I'm going through and I'm just trying to feel this, but I'm glad you feel it too.
Yeah. I think that's a big part of becoming it's weird because like, yes, I'm an artist, but then my career then somehow made me an influencer, put me into a lot of public spaces, public eyes, around people that I would have never imagined that I'd be around. And so sometimes I'm like in a whirlwind of like, wow, I started this to heal myself, like to just get through what I needed to deal with. However, doing that, it really uncovered my purpose because as I realized that everyone else viewing my work were having emotional responses to it and responding to it in a way that it was like, thank you so much, this really helped me. I realized like that's why my whole life got turned upside down, to be where I'm standing now, to be an impactful artist that helps people through some of their lows, some of their highs, like cheer, like root them on and all these things. And so I really think that I'm more impactful now on our society as an artist than I ever would have been as an athlete. And I understand hindsight 2020 why I needed that disruption because it really put me on this path that I would have never imagined my career to be what it is today, but here I am, and that passion really does just keep me going every day.
I just got chills. It's such a powerful story. So you're doing this full time. The topic of this session is monetizing your platforms. I'd love to know like where the majority of your income as a professional artist is coming from. Is it print sales? Is it brand collaborations? If you want to touch on all of them, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, so I think it's fair to say that I have gotten to a point where it's all of them, like equally. But social media, my platform really was the catalyst of all of that. Much like any other artist starting out, it's like, well, what do I do in a sea of artists online? Like, what am I supposed to do? But then I realized that I went about social media a little differently, which is, when I'm talking to other artists, I encourage them to show more of their process and to show more of their failures, to show more of their authenticity and be vulnerable, because I realize that on social media, people want the real. In a sea of superficial, they want the real, and they want to feel connected to your journey. And that was the baseline of my social media platforms. And from there, while you're strengthening your quality of work, while you're, people see that growth from your first piece to like 6 months later, they're like, whoa, you did that? Like, I remember your first piece. I still get comments like that from today, but allowing my platform to be cultivated around me and what I do is what kept me the most consistent. Because if I tried to create something that I thought was just popular or I thought would just go viral, it doesn't sustain long term. So it's not something that like every morning I'd be waking up like, man, what do I paint today to go viral online or get people's attention? And that's not really what I wanted to do, because again, 5 years from now, I don't want to be painting a celebrity. It doesn't fulfill me. It doesn't fulfill my purpose. So the baseline of my social media really had to come from, who do I want to be online and how can it be consistent? And the best answer to that was, well, be me, because that's who I can be every day. Whether that's the lows, the middle ground, or the highs, I can do that every day. And I really don't care to show people, because we're all going through the same thing. That's really where my social media platform kept growing. That was the base. That was the foundation right there. I made that commitment to myself. As my platform started growing, really, you have eyes. I'll tell you this, people are watching you that you don't know are watching you. And they're watching you from accounts that you'd be like, really? Like you're associated with, this company, that, but people, their eyes, there are people in certain places that are just meant to watch social media. And your consistency is what gets their attention. The way that your page looks, or your Instagram or your TikTok looks, is what gets them. Like, it's almost like a business card, like social media is the new business card. They look at your stuff and they're like, oh, she's serious. Oh, she does this, and this, but they don't see a plate of spaghetti on my Instagram. You know what I mean? Like, They're like, oh, she's for real. And those are when people start knocking. And honestly, the first few times that I got brand partnerships, I thought it was scams, because I'm like, where did you come from and how are you even watching me? But they, these people have 400 followers on their Instagram and they're following you, and you just never know. So the way that you present yourself really can position yourself amongst a sea of artists online. And that's like one of the main important things is how you are establishing yourself online, your consistency, your presence, your professionalism, and your quality of work. And then moving forward, like, people just want to support. So I had to figure out, like, am I going to be the artist where my art is untouchable? Or can I figure out ways to have price points that can deal with this pocket, this income, and this income? And that's really where my website sales came from, because I had to establish a price point on my website that could do all of those things and still get the support of people who are like, girl, I love your story. I don't know how else to support, but I bought a $24 print. And I'll tell people this today, I would rather have 1,000 followers who spend $50 to $100 with me every month than to have 65,000 or 100,000 who do not support or engage my artwork. And so it's really not about the follower count. And I'm learning that now too. It's really about who engages with you, your how you keep your clientele being a part of your journey. And the growth happens naturally. You don't have to do all of these, like, it's really, the growth comes with consistency. That's just, there's no, as much as people are like, try these tricks, beat the algorithm, do this, do that. Like, it's like, yeah, there's algorithm, but how do you beat the algorithm? Post all the time. Like, if this is your passion and it's what you do, then you're creating every day. So then just record it and then just post it. Or who cares? Post your paintbrush and be like, it's one of those days I can't really paint today, but I'm going to try. That's all people want to see. That's it. So being yourself and allowing people to connect with you is really important in this world, especially today. So when it comes to my sales, I found the right price points that worked for the people who follow me. And my following is cultivated around what I create. And so I wasn't really worried about getting hundreds of thousands of followers, random followers who were just waiting for whatever, a giveaway or whatever the case may be. But I wanted followers that were really involved in me and my journey. And I think that's also the focus is, a lot of times you want to get on these follow trains or do a giveaway, but these people are real too, and they want to be connected to what you're creating. So the focus really should be, how can I cultivate my support system around me and what I'm doing instead of me focusing on having just a certain number, if that makes sense. And then the brand partnerships, again, like what I'm still learning is your quality of work, your speed of work, your professionalism, and answering emails. Like answering emails and DMs, because I've learned a lot of the artists that I talk to, they don't answer DMs. They don't answer emails. Even if you think it's fake, you got to answer and reply to those things just to find out if it's worth it to you and if it's real. There's a lot of times that I got in a DM and I'm like, well, if you work for such and such, why are you DMing me? Like, that's weird. However, they're gauging how responsive you are to your client, like to your followers, how nice you are, how professional you are. And so those things are really important. You have to answer those. You have to answer those DMs. So yeah, altogether, I think it's about balance. You have to give attention to the brand partnerships. You start small. You can even start small. I started with getting free brushes in the mail and some paint and, and then posting about it. And then over time, hand cream. I remember getting like this hand cream sent to me and having to post about it. So starting small, even if it's getting the products, then you have a track record of, look, I have brand partnerships. And then you can kind of, expand and grow from there. Then you get into the major brand partnerships.
That was such a good answer. I feel like there's so much to unpack just in that one response. I want to say, first of all, your website is on point. Guys, I have her on the list of websites to check out because I was just really impressed with like how it's laid out. And you're so right about the price points. And I like that you've made your art accessible to a variety of different people that want to support you and they want to look at your art every day. And you know that the feelings and emotion and intention that you put in that piece is going to be carried through that print that you've made possible for them to own. So that's really cool. And then answer your DMs. Like sometimes I just get overwhelmed with like my emails and all of it. And you're so right that consistency and that maintenance on communication is what sets you apart and helps those opportunities come to fruition because you are responding and making it happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And even if that isn't for you, even if that doesn't follow through, like there's so much power in that, because there have been times where I've had to say no to a project, and not because I didn't want it, but maybe my schedule was crazy or at the time it didn't align with what I even knew how to do. But that professionalism leads to other, they don't forget you. 6 months later, they're like, hey, I know that first project didn't work out, but and then hit you with another opportunity. And so I think that alone is really important as well, just so you can get that follow up.
Yeah, it's so true. It really is. How do you balance being a mom and an artist and an entrepreneur and all the things and this content creator?
So one, I had to stop thinking that I had to be everything all at once, all the time. Well, I do, but in a way where I think about balance, I stopped using the word balance. That was the first step, because balance makes people think, okay, I have 100%. I need to give 10% here, 10% here, 10% here, 10% here, 10% here, or 25, 25, 25, 25. And that's not logical in life at all. So I stopped telling myself that and using the word harmony. I try to find harmony in all the aspects of my life so that they can all work together all at once at all times, because that's what I have to be. I have to be a mom at all times. I have to do my art at all times because that's what makes us money. That's what takes care of, all our expenses. So I try to make sure that if I have to 100% be a mom right here, that whatever I put in, later, it's just all working together. It's not so much, all right, my son needs me, I got to go do this. Oh, but I'm not putting in the 25% here. No, that's okay. It's okay. So I just try and find harmony. That's it. Like I threw out the word balance because I don't want to trick myself into believing that everything needs to be equal, because it doesn't, and it can't, especially when you have a little human that's depending on you.
Art in Session is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide professional and educational opportunities to creatives. Thanks to support from our listeners, we are able to keep this mission going. If you are enjoying this podcast, please consider donating at www.artinsession.org.
That's a really good answer as well. Guys, you can feel free to hop in the chat too if you've got any questions for Stina. I've got my co-host Dome here, and I'd like to give her a chance to ask you some questions as well.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question that is kind of pertaining that, but logistically, in terms of your workflow, when it comes to making art, content creation, and then doing admin work in terms of like getting back to people, shipping stuff, how do you structure that? Do you have certain days or certain hours? Do you do that daily? I'm just curious about your personal strategy for workflow.
So it really depends. There are always times where my website just has an influx of stuff, and like one day just has to be filled with getting all of those out. But really when I'm really into a good flow and like things are, I need to function at a high level, it's me waking up at 5:30, planning out, whatever I'm going to do for the day, writing my list. That includes social media. That includes what orders I need to fill. A lot of times they get filled before the sun comes up. And then when I'm on my way to the studio, I can just drop them off at the I was going to say airport, at the post office, and then go to my studio and work. That's the best way for me to do it. Or flip-flop. If it's at my studio and I'm filling, I'm painting and filling orders there, on my way home, I just drop it off at the post office. So it's continuously in my day, like, oh, it's right here. Let me just package it up real quick, put the label on it, put it to the side. When I leave, go to the post office. But as far as workflow, yes, it's about me having to get up early, making my list. When I see a list, it motivates me, especially when I cross off the first thing. One of our issues as creatives is we keep everything in our head, and then it gets all jumbled, and then we forget stuff, and then we think we're doing a lot, but then we're not really doing anything because it's all in our head, and we're like, it's all over the place. But when you see a list, there's something, you get instant gratification by crossing off that first thing, right? And then you're like, oh yeah, what else can I cross off today? And I think that's really important. Finishing things creates momentum. So that list has been one of my lifesavers. And even if it's one list for the whole week, I reference that list all week. And I'm like, oh yeah. And when I forget something, even if I make a habit of looking at this list, and it's something that I've forgotten, I see it on the list and I'm like, oh yes, I need to do that. Those things are really important for workflow too, because we do forget, we get busy, especially when your schedule gets really busy and you're getting ripped in every direction, you got meetings here and there. It's very easy to forget things, but when you have a list that you can reference, it is such a good, like, oh yes, I can't forget that. So what I do is I break down my list in very important factors. What can I do right now, immediately? If I can cross off like one or two things immediately, then it makes me feel good. And then I'm ready to be like, okay, now I got to sit down and do this next thing. This is something I could do today. And well, now what do I need to get done by the end of the week? And that's how I break down the list so that I can really maximize my time, feel good about getting things done, and not overwhelm myself by thinking everything needs to get done in one day. So that's kind of how I deal with my work.
No, that's a really good tip, just building momentum slowly and moving on. And it sounds like you do a little bit of everything every day. You're not just thinking categorically.
Correct.
Yeah, another question I have is, do you reach out to brands yourself, or you just wait for them to come to you? Do you do any kind of outreach?
I've never done any outreach. For me, it just works better if I'm invited to whatever the project is. So I haven't really, I think early in the beginning, not brands, but when it came to exhibitions and galleries, I would send out emails. And those emails, and this is like 2017, 2018, and you guys can write this down if you want because it works. But you can say, hey, insert your name, and I'm a artist in blah, 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 and I specialize in blah, 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 like oil painting. And I am looking to fill my exhibition schedule for 2023. I have time in June to July, or this or that, or the last 6 months of the year, and I would love to have the opportunity to exhibit in your gallery. Here's samples of my work. I've also mailed you and then I used to mail, like, I have it right here, actually. I used to mail out, I made this in 2018, a pamphlet. Sorry, can you see this? A pamphlet that just, I don't know what just happened. Anyway, a pamphlet that had my work in it, my bio, artist statement, and then in the back, where I've exhibited, and some of the major brands that I worked with. And this really helped. Like, that in the beginning was something that was a big thing for me. And then I would just send like prints, like print cards with those in the gallery so they could see it firsthand. I think you have to have a little bit of control of your career and do a little bit of outreach, but after a while, and you have to be okay with hearing no. You really just need one yes, and so no doesn't hurt, and that's something else that I think you have to get, a lot of people have to get over, is no does not hurt. You might not align with their schedule at that time, or you might not align with the work that they're putting up at that time, but regardless, you just need one yes. So I think it makes, even if you get a million no's, it still gives you a sense of responsibility to your own career, to put it in your own hands and make something happen. So I think that's important. But brands, no.
Yeah, that's really.
Yeah, brands though, I haven't really do that. I just let them kind of have their own ideas and come to me.
No, that's really cool that so many people are coming. Go ahead, Ania. Sorry, I totally have a lag here.
No, you're good. It's cool that, like you're saying, people are coming to you, and you just keep up that consistent effort in all the ways, and your presence, and you never know who's watching. That was such a really valid point too, that there could be some random account that's following you that's like the head of the NBA or something, and wanting you to paint a mural, or you just really never know who's out there.
And that has happened.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
What would you say is the percentage of like passive and active income? How money coming from murals? How many commissions do you take? What's art sales look like? What's the kind of breakdown of a flow? Because I like that you have multiple streams of income.
Yeah.
And not just like relying on one thing.
So my website, it does about, I would honestly, before I did my new website, it's very new, so I'm getting back into getting that back into my workflow. But before I changed it, it was making a good at least 40% of my income. And my murals, now that I've really established just my name and the mural part, because I think where a lot of artists can go wrong is their pricing structure. I think you have to really grow your value and your pricing structure at the same time. So in the beginning of me doing these murals, my value and my pricing were lower than what they are now. My value wasn't established yet because I didn't have the track record of this is what I can do. And as my value grew, my pricing grew. And so now my murals and my work, probably like 70%, 80% of my income, while my website is getting, now that I have a new website, and thank you for saying you like it because it's new. I just completely did an overhaul and hired someone to do it. And so I'm absolutely in love with it. So that made me feel good. But now that I'm getting into that, what I would love is for it to go back to being like 50-50, or 60 on my website and 40 in murals. So I love murals. I'm not ready to give them up yet. But when you think long term, like at some point your body's going to be like, nope, can't do this anymore. And so you want that website and your work to kind of do a lot of the work itself, which you can do with your platform. There was a time where there was a time before I changed my website that I didn't have to do a mural or a commission, and my website would take care of everything for me. I'm really picky with my commission, so I might do one every couple of months. Like, I'm really picky with them now, because in the beginning I started resenting them, because again, as you're growing, you're doing things because you need to make money and you're trying to establish yourself. And so now I'm able, and I'm lucky that I'm able to be more picky and choosy about what commissions I take and not feel bad that I don't have to take them, so that's the best thing. And then I did publish a book in 2017. It was called Entrepreneur, Making Your Dream a Business. And so that brings in income, I would say maybe 10%. But I also do downloadables like how to price your work and certain things, because I do also mentor a lot of artists. And so those are other things that I've put into place so that I could continuously have that passive income without having to think about it.
Totally. I love how diverse you are. That's something we touched on today in today's session, was just not putting all of your eggs in one basket, that you have skills that are related to your art that can be monetized. And whenever you can have just a flow coming in from many directions, then one slows down, one picks up. And that's really the sustainable way for artists.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips on pricing your work?
Yeah, so like so for me personally, my murals, I go by square foot. So I have my established dollar per square foot. That's my formula. I don't deviate from it so that no one thinks, oh, you just gave them like the one thing that you don't want to do to your clients is have them confused on why you price something the way you do. And so the more information, like this is my price per square foot. This mural is 8 by 8. 64 times, my price is, that's what it is, and so it's less confusing, less room for negotiation, less room for pushback, which I learned because a business is always going to try and get, their the most for their money too. So when you have a formula, you don't have to deviate. For my commissions on Canvas, I do my price per linear inch. And again, it's a sliding scale. So at one point I was at maybe $10 a linear inch, and now I'm at $75 a linear inch. Back in the day, I can't even tell you what I would take for a mural, but now I'm at $50 a square foot. So you have to establish your value while you're set. So it's like a sliding scale. Where is your value in what you're doing right now? What quality are you producing? How long does it take you? If your value is right here, then your pricing should, kind of match that. Then as you grow, your value now is established here. Now your pricing should match that. Now you're here, and then it continues. A lot of artists outprice themselves too early, and so they never get the work. They never get the work, and so they never get to grow their value. And so outpricing yourself from where you are right now really causes you to hurt yourself in the long term. Your long-term value, it's a long-term game. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. We want money now because yes, we have to pay our bills, but if we're doing it right, and like you said, spreading, having different things coming in, you do it right, it's the long-term value. That's the things that I get from my murals and my work now. When I first started, I wouldn't even have thought I could get the pricing that I get now, you know what I mean? But it came with establishing myself in the industry and establishing my value. And now you get to a point where people do not blink an eye at what you tell them you're worth. But that formula is very important because it does alleviate a lot of pushback when it comes to talk. And then as artists, we don't really like to give out a price at all. It's just a part of us. We don't like to say this is worth this is what I'm selling this for, or this is what this commission is. So if it helps, you just say I'm $20 per linear inch. The formula is, your width, so 24 plus 36 times your linear inch. And if you just tell a client like, yes, I'm $24, for by linear inch, and you just let me know how big your painting is, and that will be the price. Let them do the work. Let them do the math. You know what I mean? And then it kind of takes it off of you and it puts it back into their hands. They can do their own math and figure out what their price is. And that can alleviate some of your fear of saying a price. Now I say what it is, and I'm like, you either can do it or you can't, and I'm moving on, but if it helped in the beginning to be like, I'm $45 or $50 a square foot on a mural. If someone's like, so how much would this cost? Because a lot of people like to pressure you into giving a price right away before you can really establish what it is you're even doing or how big it is or whatever. And so if you tell them just, my mural is $50 a square foot, you let me know later what size this is, then they know how much you're worth. Then you can keep it moving, and then they'll get back to you. You know what I mean? So it's still all,
totally.
Yeah, it's still all a little bit of a confidence boost too when you can just kind of put it back on them to be like, this is my price. You can figure the rest out.
Yeah, I also do square foot for my murals, and I found that a lot of people just don't know how much art costs.
Yep.
So when you give them a baseline, it helps them understand what it is that they're paying for. And I'm a fast painter, so I can't charge by the hour because that wouldn't make any sense for me.
Right.
And I don't I already kind of know what my supplies are going to be, and I already have a lot of that stuff. So I'm not charging per supplies, per job or whatnot. So having that all-inclusive baseline of square footage has worked really well for me as well. And I've never thought about the linear square inch, that's something new. So I'm happy that you shared that.
Yeah, so if you guys have to write that down, linear, so a price by linear inch would be the width plus the height times your dollar amount. Whereas square foot is, obviously we're doing fees. So it's the width times the height times your dollar amount.
Okay.
Question for y'all, if you don't mind. Like, so I find some clients, maybe they have lesser wall space, but they want a lot more detail packed in for a mural versus some, they're like, hey, say you're at a basketball stadium, they got a 50-foot wall or whatever. How do you deal with the square foot rule if you're kind of dealing with different levels of intricacy?
So for me, I keep mine 100% the same, because I have my formula down pat where like she said, I paint really fast. I've never been on a mural longer than 2-3 weeks. So my where my mural might look more detailed, the way that I paint in my process is established where it actually doesn't take me that much work. It looks detailed. And I think if you're getting into murals, you'll understand a little bit more that the bigger the work, the less you do to make it look detailed. And so what I do on my canvas is not the same thing that I do on my murals. I'm not fiddling on a small like detail on the shirt because when people are stepping away, they can't see it. So everything that I'm doing is in a much grander scale, but appears detailed. I don't know if this makes sense, but so the level of detail is implied in your painting versus actually done in the work, in the labor. And so I think that's something when you start doing more murals, you'll establish your process where you'll understand that, yeah, this looks more detailed, but I really didn't do that much work. I really just kind of had to play around with paints, shadows, lights, whatever the case may be. And so I think once I established that, the 50, like the price per square foot was even better because then you'll get murals like this. And this took 2 days. So it all kind of evens out in the long run, you know what I mean? And this is like, I think 20 feet by 10 feet or something like that. So it all kind of evens out, but you have to find a process that it's like working smarter, but not harder. Learn your process and figure out how you can make those decisions and make your work look detailed, especially on a grand scale, because you're not going to do, it's not the same process on a smaller, and then you're just going to be there forever, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I'm a little bit different that I have like, it is more of a sliding scale where I have an average per square foot, and then it depends on the size and the level of detail. I get a lot of clients that I've had people like, oh, well, let's just do it smaller then, but then it's like packing in a lot more detail, or they'll have a bunch of elements in a really small area. And if I'm having to, every square inch or foot has an element that, an animal or something, then I price accordingly. But I see what you're saying by incorporating those factors in an overall price. My average is also half of what you're charging. So I could see how like you've come up with a number that's all inclusive for any circumstance that people can either pay it or they don't. And then you just don't take, you don't have to take the work that's less than that.
Correct.
Awesome. Thanks, Gage. Does anybody else have any questions? We've got about 10 minutes left. Yes.
All right. Well, no. Is anyone else going? I
No,
can
go ahead.
going all day. All right. Well, I'm gonna ask another one then. So, I really resonate with a lot of what you have to say about like art is kind of the healing journey, and really like that spiritual or personal process of like me uncovering myself is how I started out this journey. And so I'm curious, what have you found besides just kind of like telling people your story and being vulnerable have you done to really like take it to that next level of engagement, to encourage people to like really have the resonance with your work besides I tell this story of me, where they're a part of your story? Are there any examples you have of that?
Yeah, so I think, one of the stories that first stood out to me was very early on in my art career, and it was the painting that you happen to have up called There's More of Us. And this lady is standing back staring at this painting, or I'm doing an exhibition. So to preface this, I'm at a solo exhibition of my work, and she's looking at it, and I couldn't figure out like if she loved it or hated it. I was kind of like, what's going on here? But when you're in exhibitions, you kind of have to work the room. So I end up talking to her, and she's like, can you tell me about this piece? And I started just telling her the story of the piece, just like I told you guys. And I remember feeling her get really quiet, and then I look over and she has tears in her eyes. And then she explains to me what she felt, and what she got from that painting and why it meant so much to her. And that was my first like, oh, I'm not doing this just for me. That was the first one. Over time, it was like, okay, everyone has very similar stories, whether they're dealing with abuse, depression, anxiety. And I just made the decision to not care if like no one on social media like can judge me. That's how I feel. Like, I don't care what they say. They don't live my life. They're not my people. They're not my circle. So I'm going to share my story, and someone's going to hear it who needed it if I helped one person, right? So that lady kind of started everything. But every show started to become like that for me. I started noticing that people were looking at the work and then have their entirely different interpretation and emotional connection to my work. Where I'm dealing with something, they looked at it and it took them to something they were dealing with, and they wanted the piece just from the fact that it made them feel like they could get through whatever it was that they were dealing with. So a lot of times when I'm at my exhibitions, they don't even know my story. They just see the work and they're asking like, why did you make this? And then I get to talk to people one-on-one about why I made it. And I'm being honest and I'm being vulnerable, and it's okay. It's okay. They're there to see your work. So it's okay to tell your story, regardless if it's a fragment of a story, it's not always like, Stina was an athlete, she broke her leg, she got into art, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, I've been through a lot of shit, And so it's in my art. I think I've painted probably over 250, 300 paintings in my short time of painting, but it's because, I'm dealing with stuff. And so I wanted to put it out there, and having conversations and not being afraid to tell your stories is really what helped me connect with people and kind of help them heal too, help them go through their head and be like, okay, I'm dealing with this, but she did too. And this painting really makes me feel at peace. This painting really makes me feel good about, XYZ, or I don't feel alone and I want it. The emotional connection, like even if you take out the whole like purpose of art or my journey through art, and you only talk business, emotions sell. And that's just the truth.
So true. We have snaps. Yeah, we snap. It's like really, really good. Man, I'm so glad that you joined us today.
And me too.
Let's decide.
I have one more question. We talked a lot about diversifying, and then you also mentioned not spreading yourself thin, which I really appreciate, because I'm always trying to find that balance, and it feels like a lot of things are pulling you in a lot of directions. So what advice would you give to someone who is just starting out pertaining that, in terms of, especially when it comes to social media, like wanting to do it all, like we just covered so much stuff of the possibilities of how to monetize your art, how to show up, how to grow your business. But what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out?
Okay, so first of all, I would say you lose a lot of time on social media. And so it's really important to understand what your use of social media is. Your use of social media needs to be very intentional when it comes to building. And so instead of scrolling for hours, say, okay, I'm posting today between 8:30 and 9 o'clock in the morning, and that's it. Like, you're putting out the content doesn't mean you have to consume the content that's on social media. And so just post and leave it alone. Like, I legit will post. I still do it. I post and I exit Instagram. I never open it again until I'm chilling in the bed and I'm ready to like end my day. I never open everyone's or lunch breaks. I'll go on there, and you got to talk to people. So, you know, when you get comments or something, you want to make sure that you're engaging, but you don't have to, nothing is saying you have to be accessible 24/7 online. That's it. Have a schedule, get off of it. If you're chilling, having lunch, then you can get on, answer people, get back off, or you're done with your day, get back on, communicate with people. But really be disciplined and starve your distractions. That's first. Because you'll realize that we waste a lot of time scrolling. And so a lot of times we think we're busy, but we're just scrolling social media. And if we take that time away and put that into the things that we're actually supposed to be doing on our list, we'd be way more productive. Even if it's an extra 2 hours out of the day that you're not scrolling on social media, you have that 2 hours to be painting, you have that 2 hours to be packaging, that's really where all of the time goes. And that's just the truth. We lose years. Like, over a lifetime, we lose years scrolling social media. It's been proven. It's been in all the studies. So make a schedule. Whether that's, if your best time is 8:30 to 9, or if it might be at lunchtime, whatever the case may be, make a schedule. Make your list, make a schedule. Get off social media and get on your list. That's number one right there. That's number one. My phone's on Do Not Disturb. I keep my hours. Like, so if I wake up at 5, which I do regularly, that's for me. I do not let anyone disturb it. My creative time is for me. I know that everyone's asleep. I don't need to answer emails at that time. I don't need to be on social media at that time. I don't need to answer phone calls. I don't need to answer text messages. That time is for me. So my creative time is sacred. Whether that's creating my list, creating my plan of action for the day, everything is intentional and everything needs to be, and it's sacred. Like, if you really want this, you have to get a little bit selfish. You have to make a few sacrifices, and you have to have a schedule. And that's just the bottom line. Treat yourself like, and especially if you do it full time and you don't have anyone telling you what to do, which is very difficult, create a schedule and force yourself to stick to it like you're at work, because it makes no sense to me in my brain to go to work faithfully and loyally and clock in and do our job and clock out, but then not do the same for yourself. So that's my tip.
No, that's really powerful. It's really simple, but it's so powerful. It makes all the difference, all the snaps.
Totally. I cannot think of a better way to end this series, to end this session. This was an incredible interview, and I'm so grateful for your time. Stina, thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for just your passion, like showing up at the easel the way you have, just paving the way, and then finding ways that you can package that information just like we're doing and give that back to other artists. That's really the goal. Like, we can hold on to all this knowledge ourselves, but to see other artists thriving and to applying this information is so important. And I'm grateful for artists like you that are out there doing it. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Art in Session is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to provide professional and educational opportunities to creatives. Thanks to support from our listeners, we are able to keep this mission going. If you are enjoying this podcast, please consider donating at www.artinsession.org.